How to Think Beyond Limits. There was a season in my life when I walked as if I had chains on my ankles, not physical ones, but the kind forged by years of silent self-doubt and inherited fears. I lived beneath an invisible ceiling, one I did not build, but one I accepted. I had dreams that felt like stars, brilliant, distant, unreachable. Every time I tried to rise, something inside me whispered, "You are not made for that." It was not the world that confined me. It was my own belief of what was possible, and that belief, it was not born from truth. It was planted by other people's limits, watered by my own hesitation, and grown in the soil of comfort. Until one day I met a man whose mind was bigger than any room I had ever been in. He did not teach me. He reminded me. He reminded me that there is no limit to a mindset free. And that was the day I began to live. Most people do not fail because they are not smart. They fail because they have accepted a blueprint someone else drew. They were told how far they could go, what was realistic, what was wise. And without knowing it, they believed it. The cage was never locked. The door was always open, but they never tried to leave. Thinking beyond limits is not just a mindset. It is an act of rebellion against the smallness that tries to seduce you. You must declare war on average. You must become radically unreasonable with your vision. You must become the kind of person who chooses possibility over permission. That is the heartbeat of this book, not just to inspire you, but to awaken you, to remind you that the sky was never your ceiling. It was your invitation. There is a fundamental truth that lives beneath every extraordinary life. Your thoughts shape your world, not in a poetic sense, but in the most practical, piercing way. If you think small, you will live small. If you expect resistance, you will create it. If you believe you are not enough, you will prove it to yourself every day. But the opposite is also true. When you begin to believe that there is more within you, life rearranges to meet that belief. It does not happen in a moment. It happens in decisions. The decision to rise, to stretch, to speak, to show up. You do not break limits by force. You dissolve them by belief. You were not born to fit inside a box. You were born to redraw the map. But maps are only useful to people who dare to travel. That is what this book is, a map to a mind unchained. Each chapter will open a door you thought was locked. Each idea will ask you not just to understand, but to embody. And each truth will challenge what you have accepted as just the way it is. But here is the question. Are you ready to think in a way you have never thought before? Are you willing to lose your excuses to find your freedom? Because the life you long for is not on the other side of luck. It is on the other side of mindset. You see, the problem is not the limits out there. It is the limits in here. Most of us are not imprisoned by walls, but by whisper echoes of past failures, old names we answered to dreams that turned into disappointments. And because we were hurt, we built a fortress around our mind. We called it protection, but it became a prison. The very thing we use to shield ourselves now keeps us from the sunlight of new possibilities. You cannot think beyond limits while clinging to the language of lack. You must give up the need to be realistic. You must abandon the comfort of conformity. Greatness begins where logic ends. I have walked through cities and seen people with gold in their eyes, but gravel in their spirit. They look alive but feel hollow. Why? Because somewhere along the way they traded wonder for worry. They stopped asking what if and started saying I cannot. But deep inside there is a flicker, a spark, a small rebellion that refuses to die. That spark is the reason you picked up this book. It is the part of you that still believes. And I promise you, belief is more powerful than any boundary. Belief can shatter decades of doubt in one bold decision. This is not a book about motivation. That is too shallow. Motivation wears off. This is a book about transformation, real, lasting, soul-deep transformation. It begins when you stop thinking like a prisoner and start thinking like a pioneer. When you stop asking, what if it goes wrong, and start asking, what if it goes right? When you stop living for safety and start living for significance. Thinking beyond limits is not a gift. It is a discipline. It is the daily decision to challenge your thoughts before they become your truth. It is waking up and choosing boldness over fear again and again and again. I will not ask you to believe everything at once. That is not how change works. I will ask you to suspend disbelief long enough to try, to entertain the idea that maybe, just maybe, you have been playing a smaller game than the one you were built for. And if you are willing to go there, if you are willing to sit with the discomfort of expansion, then what you find on the other side will be nothing short of breathtaking. You will not just think beyond limits, you will live beyond them. This journey will not always feel easy. Sometimes it will feel like dying, but that is because part of you will die, the part that settled, the part that shrank, the part that was silent when it should have spoken. Let it die. Let it burn. From those ashes, a new way of thinking will rise. And when it does, you will not just change your mind, you will change your life. So let us begin. Chapter 1. From Illusion to Intention. There is a quiet danger in the way most people live. It does not come with sirens or screams. It arrives slowly, dressed in routine, hidden beneath familiar smiles. It is the illusion of progress while standing still. A person wakes up, goes to work, pays their bills, checks their phone, watches their favorite show, and goes to sleep. And tomorrow, they repeat. From the outside, it looks like life, but inside, a voice is growing restless. Is this all there is? That question does not come from weakness. It comes from truth, aching to be heard. Somewhere between childhood wonder and adult responsibility, many of us were taught to stop dreaming, not directly, but through subtle dismissals. Be realistic. Grow up. That is just not how the world works. And so we lowered our eyes. We traded the sky for the ceiling. We called it maturity, but really, it was surrender. Most people are not lost. They are stuck in a life they settled for. They have goals, yes, but those goals are not born from fire. They are born from fear, a raise, a vacation, a little more comfort. But comfort is not the same as freedom, and safety is not the same as growth. We become what we tolerate. And if you tolerate small thinking, it will become your identity. You will stop reaching because you will forget how to stretch. You will stop questioning because you will forget there are better answers. But the truth is this: no one was born to live small. No one was created to merely exist. You are here to expand, to rise, to shatter ceilings, not just for yourself, but for everyone who ever told you to play it safe. When you decide to think beyond limits, you are not just changing your future. You are rewriting the story of what is possible for every person who watches you. Why do people stay small? Why do they choose a life that does not match their heart? Because small feels safe. It is predictable. It does not ask you to risk rejection or failure or the unknown. Thinking big demands faith. It invites criticism. It exposes you. And we fear exposure more than mediocrity. That is why people say things like, "It is not that bad," or "At least I have a job," or "Maybe next year." These are not statements of truth. They are survival strategies. But survival is not enough. You were made to soar, and you cannot fly while gripping the edge of your cage. The mind, when left unattended, becomes a jailer. It keeps you in yesterday's habits. It locks you inside what is familiar. But with awareness, the same mind becomes your liberator. It sees possibility where others see problems. It creates new paths when the road ends. That is why every breakthrough begins in the mind. Not with more money, more time, or more opportunity, but with a better question. Questions like, what am I allowing that no longer serves me? What would I do if I was not afraid? Who would I become if I stopped pretending? You do not need more talent. You need more truth. The truth is, you already know when you are playing small. You feel it in your gut. You hear it in the silence of your dreams. You see it in the way you shrink around people who intimidate you. But here is the shift. That feeling is not your enemy. It is your invitation. It is your soul reminding you there is more, and that more is not outside of you. It is inside, waiting to be claimed. Let us talk about intention. Most people live by accident. They stumble into relationships, careers, habits. They drift, and drifting is dangerous. Because if you do not steer your mind, someone else will. Intention is the discipline of the extraordinary. It is waking up each day and deciding who you will be, how you will think, and what you will refuse to accept. It is not about control. It is about clarity, and clarity is power. When you know what you stand for, limits lose their grip. When your mind is clear, your path becomes inevitable. There is a principle that changed my life. Whatever you focus on expands. If you focus on lack, you will live in it. If you focus on what you do not have, you will always feel poor. But if you focus on potential, you will see it everywhere, even in pain, especially in pain, because pain, when honored, becomes purpose. And purpose is stronger than fear. You do not overcome limits by force. You dissolve them by replacing them with a vision so compelling, so honest, that anything less becomes intolerable. Imagine a tree planted in a small pot. No matter how strong its roots, it can only grow to the size of the container. But what if the tree never questioned the pot? What if it thought, this is just the way it is? That is how most people think. They confuse their current conditions with their ultimate capacity. But the truth is, you were not born for the pot. You were born for the forest. You were made to stretch toward the sun, to break through the soil of your past, and to become something no one in your family tree has ever seen. This is not about ambition for its own sake. It is about alignment. When your thoughts align with your highest vision, you move differently. You speak with conviction. You carry presence. You no longer chase success. You become it. Because success is not something you do. It is something you allow when you stop blocking your own brilliance. The question is not whether you are capable. The question is whether you are willing. Willing to think differently, to act before you feel ready, to bet on yourself in a world that wants you to doubt. Let today be the day you stop asking for permission. You do not need it. You were born with authority. The authority to think, to decide, to create. The authority to reject what is common and rise into what is uncommon. Thinking beyond limits begins with a quiet rebellion. It says, I will not settle. And when you say that with your whole soul, life begins to move. Doors open, people appear, energy returns. Because the universe does not respond to hesitation, it responds to clarity. So do not just read this chapter, let it read you. Let it challenge the thoughts you have never questioned. Let it burn through the excuses you have made sacred. Let it ask you, who would I be if I no longer believed in limits? And then let the answer rise, not from your past, but from your power. Because that answer once found will guide everything that comes next. Chapter 2. The Prison of Permission. There is a story we are all told, though no one remembers exactly when they heard it. It begins when we are young. Someone somewhere teaches us to wait. Wait your turn. Wait until you are older. Wait until you are ready. Wait until someone tells you it is okay. And so without realizing it, we begin to build a life on borrowed time. We hold back our voice. We tame our desires. We shrink our dreams to fit into the small pockets of other people's approval. And before long, we are not living. We are waiting. Waiting becomes a habit. It wears the disguise of patience, but it is often fear in costume. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear that we are not enough. So we seek permission. From parents, teachers, friends, society, we ask silently, is it okay to want more? Is it safe to dream that big? And if the answer is unclear, we freeze. Not because we lack ambition, but because we have never been taught that the gate was never locked. Most people do not need more encouragement. They need to stop asking for permission to be free. You see it everywhere. The talented singer who only performs when someone insists. The visionary who hides their ideas until it is the right time. The writer who keeps their words trapped in notebooks instead of releasing them to the world. These people are not lazy. They are loyal to fear, to stories that say, "Who do you think you are?" and that question sharper than a knife is the blade that has kept more genius silent than any failure ever could. But here is the truth. The world is not waiting for perfect people. It is waiting for people who are willing to be seen. Permission is a prison disguised as politeness. It teaches us to dim our light so others do not feel blind. It rewards compliance and punishes courage. But courage is the only door out. It does not always look like roaring confidence. Sometimes it is quiet. It is showing up anyway, speaking even when your voice trembles, creating even when no one claps. That is the kind of courage that sets fire to limitations. It does not need applause. It just needs action. Why do so many people wait for someone else to validate their dreams? Because we were trained to believe that authority lies outside of us. We were told what is possible based on someone else's fears. And because we trusted them, we believed them. But someone else's limits should never become your reality. Their vision is not your responsibility. Their doubt is not your destiny. The moment you decide to think beyond limits is the moment you reclaim your authority, not over others, but over your own life. Let me say this clearly. You do not need anyone's permission to become who you truly are, not your parents, not your boss, not your friends, not your past. If your dream is in you, then you were meant to build it. That desire is not random, it is a roadmap, a signal, a sacred instruction written into your soul. And when you ignore it, you suffer, not with obvious pain, but with quiet misery, the kind that eats at you slowly, the kind that makes you tired even when you are well rested, because nothing drains you more than denying who you are. Some people wait until they are less afraid. Others wait until they are more confident. But here is the secret: confidence does not come first. Action does. You must step before you feel certain. You must leap before you see the net. That is what separates the few from the many. Most people wait for the fear to disappear, but the ones who rise, they move anyway. They make peace with trembling hands. They speak with shaky voices. They act with pounding hearts. And in doing so, they break the cycle. The mind loves familiar patterns, even if those patterns keep you small. If you have spent years thinking, "I need to be told I am good enough," then the first time you declare your own worth, your brain will resist. It will scream. It will say, "This is dangerous." But it is not danger, it is discomfort. And discomfort is the price of transformation. You cannot evolve and stay the same. You cannot break free and stay comfortable. The path to expansion will always feel like chaos at first, but that is how you know you are walking the right road. Let us talk about what it means to give yourself permission. It means you no longer wait to be chosen. You choose yourself. You stop asking, "Do they see me?" and start declaring, "I see me." You no longer delay your dreams for the comfort of others. You live in such a way that your existence becomes a permission slip for others to do the same. Because when one person rises, they lift others by example. That is how change begins, not with consensus, but with courage. It takes tremendous strength to stop asking, "Is this okay?" and start asking, "Is this true?" Because truth will not always be popular, it will not always get applause, but it will set you free. When you stop needing permission, you start building momentum, and momentum is more powerful than motivation. It carries you through the days when you feel like quitting. It reminds you that the old version of you, the one who waited, is gone. And in their place stands someone who decides. What if just for today you gave yourself full permission to think boldly, to speak truthfully, to act fearlessly? What if you stopped apologizing for your ambition? What if you no longer waited for a sign? What if the sign is this moment, this sentence, this breath? You do not have to earn the right to dream. You already have it. It was given to you when you were born, and now it is time to claim it. You will still feel afraid. That is normal, but fear is not your master unless you obey it. Let it come, let it pass. Do not let it drive. Because fear may protect you from pain, but it will also rob you of purpose. And you were not born to be protected. You were born to be powerful, to expand, to lead, to awaken the part of you that has been asleep far too long. So this is your moment. The door is open. The cage was never locked. Step out, step up, step into the life that is already waiting for the version of you who stopped waiting. Chapter 3. Destroying the myth of enough. There is a lie so deeply rooted in the human heart that most people never think to question it. It sounds noble. It wears the mask of humility. But it is poison. The lie is this: I am not enough. It begins as a whisper in childhood, perhaps the moment someone you loved looked disappointed, or when you failed and no one reminded you that failure is a chapter, not a conclusion. The whisper grows louder with time. It is reinforced by comparisons, by expectations, by the impossible standards of a world obsessed with performance. And before long, you are carrying a question everywhere you go: what must I do to finally be enough? That question is the beginning of exhaustion. It causes people to work harder than their body can handle, to people please until their soul becomes a stranger, to achieve endlessly but never arrive. It is the hidden root behind perfectionism, burnout, imposter syndrome. Because if you are not enough, then everything you do becomes a desperate attempt to earn worth. But here is the truth that breaks the cycle: you were never meant to be enough. Because enough is not a destination. It is a myth, a moving target that always shifts the moment you get close. What does it even mean to be enough? Enough for who? Enough for what? Most people cannot answer that, because it is not a real standard. It is a shadow, a haunting, something inherited from generations of silent struggle. You were told to measure yourself by grades, by beauty, by status, by how easy you are to love. And when you failed to fit those molds, you concluded that you were broken. But you are not broken. You were simply measuring the ocean with a teacup. You must understand this. The belief that you are not enough is not yours. It was given to you, and what is given can be returned. You can choose a new thought, a new identity, not one built on performance, but on presence. You are not what you do. You are not what you achieve. You are not the approval you receive. You are not the mistakes you regret. You are the awareness behind all of that. The spirit that keeps rising even when the world says stay down. That is who you are. Thinking beyond limits begins with this sacred knowing: I am whole even as I grow. I do not need to prove my worth to earn the right to expand. My desire to grow is not evidence of lack, it is evidence of life. Trees do not apologize for growing taller. Stars do not shrink because someone feels small beside them. And you too must stop shrinking to fit into spaces you have outgrown. You were not born to be enough. You were born to be infinite. You see, when you believe you are not enough, you will sabotage opportunity. You will turn away from greatness because you secretly believe you are not worthy of it. That is why some people cannot receive love or money or success, because it contradicts the identity they carry. But when you shift your belief, everything changes. You stop chasing and start choosing. You stop performing and start creating. You stop begging for scraps and start building the feast. This does not mean you stop improving, but you improve from love, not from lack. That is the difference. Most people grow because they hate who they are. But real transformation comes when you love yourself enough to say, I deserve more. It is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is understanding that you are a vessel of divine potential, and that potential is not unlocked by shame, it is unlocked by truth. Imagine a child learning to walk. They stumble, fall, laugh. No one says you are not enough. They are learning, they are growing, they are becoming. But somewhere along the way, we forgot that we too are still learning. We expect perfection. We punish failure. And in doing so, we disconnect from our own evolution. But the truth is, you will never be done. You will always be becoming. And that is beautiful, because it means there is no ceiling to your growth. So how do you destroy the myth of enough? You stop asking for external validation. You stop measuring yourself by temporary metrics. You return to your center. You remind yourself, I am not here to earn worth. I am here to express it. You begin to choose actions that align with who you are, not who you are trying to impress. You speak even when your voice shakes. You rest even when the world demands hustle. You dare to be proud of yourself, not because you have arrived, but because you had the courage to begin. The world will not always understand this. That is okay. You are not living for their understanding. You are living for your liberation, and liberation begins in the mind. It is the moment you say, I am already worthy, not later, not someday, now. And from that worth you rise, you stretch, you create, you give, not to prove but to pour. You become generous not from emptiness, but from overflow. There is no perfect version of you waiting in the future. There is only a more true version, a version that is unafraid to be seen, a version that no longer bows to the idol of enough, a version that knows I am not what I have, I am not what I lack, I am what I choose, and today I choose to think beyond limits. Let that truth settle into your bones. Let it break the old stories. Let it become the lens through which you see yourself. Because when you stop believing in the lie of enough, you start walking in your real power. You stop looking for doors. You realize you were the key all along. Chapter 4. The Invisible Walls. We build, it is not the walls outside us that hold us back. It is the ones we build within. The silent barriers of belief that shape our behavior long before we even try. These are not made of stone or steel. They are made of memories of past rejections, of moments when we dared and were told we should not have. We build these walls in defense, but eventually we forget we built them. We start to believe they were always there. One of the most dangerous things in the world is not failure, it is learned limitation. The quiet conviction that this is just the way I am. It sounds reasonable. It sounds wise. But it is the most disguised form of surrender. When a person says, I am not good with money, or I could never speak in public, or I am just not creative, what they are really saying is, I have accepted the walls. Not because the walls are true, but because they are familiar. And familiarity to the human mind often feels safer than freedom. But safety is a false god. It promises peace and delivers paralysis. It lures you into small thinking by disguising fear as logic. It tells you to avoid risk, to stay in your lane, to only move when certainty is guaranteed. But greatness is not born in certainty. It is born in conviction. You must believe in something no one else sees yet. You must walk toward a door you are not even sure exists, and you must do it without waiting for applause. Think of a baby elephant. When it is young, it is tied with a rope. It pulls, struggles, tries to break free, but it cannot, so eventually it gives up. Years later, the elephant is full-grown, strong enough to tear down a tree, but it no longer tries. The rope is still there, but the belief is the real chain. That is how most people live. Their strength has grown, but their mind has not. They stopped testing the limits because once upon a time they failed, and that moment became a prophecy. To think beyond limits, you must test your walls, gently, boldly, relentlessly. You must stop asking, can I? And start asking, what happens if I try? You must become curious about your resistance. Ask yourself, who taught me to believe this? Where did this rule come from? What would happen if I broke it? Because most of your limitations are not laws. They are habits of thought. And habits can be rewritten. The mind loves what is predictable, even when it is painful. That is why people stay in toxic jobs, dead relationships, self-sabotaging routines. The pain is familiar and the brain calls that comfort, but the unfamiliar that is terrifying. That is why transformation feels like chaos at first, because you are leaving the prison of your own patterns. You are choosing possibility over programming. To break invisible walls, you must move differently. You must act before you feel ready. You must speak before the words are perfect. You must choose growth over gracefulness, because at first it will not look smooth. It will not feel aligned. It will feel awkward, ugly, unsure. That is okay. That is the price of freedom. Every master was once a beginner. Every legend was once overlooked. Every great journey began with trembling hands. I once knew a man who believed he was terrible at speaking. He had a quiet voice, a stutter, and a fear of being misunderstood. For years he avoided the spotlight. But one day someone he loved asked him to share his story, not because it was polished, but because it was real. And when he spoke, people cried, not because he was eloquent, but because he was honest. That day his wall cracked, not because the world changed, but because he did. That is what happens when you stop defending your limits. You discover that the thing you feared was never real. It was a ghost, a memory, a thought, and thoughts can be changed. You do not destroy them with force. You outgrow them with action. Every time you do something you once believed you could not do, a part of your past dies, and something greater is born. So ask yourself, what walls have I accepted without questioning? What abilities have I buried because someone once laughed? What dreams have I postponed because fear dressed itself as wisdom? These are not small questions. They are keys. And if you dare to answer them, you will begin to see cracks in the foundation of your false limitations. Remember, your mind was not built to keep you happy. It was built to keep you safe. But what keeps you safe may also keep you stuck. To grow, you must teach your mind a new definition of safety. One where risk is not danger, it is destiny. One where discomfort is not punishment, it is progress. One where the unknown is not your enemy, it is your next chapter. When you do this, life begins to move, not because it has changed, but because you have. The walls were never real. They only looked real because you stared at them long enough. But now you have turned your eyes to something greater. Now you are no longer asking for comfort. You are asking for capacity. And life responds to that question with open arms. So walk forward, even when it feels uncertain, especially when it feels uncertain, because each step is not just movement, it is defiance. It is saying to every voice that told you to play small, I am no longer waiting, I am no longer hiding, I am no longer believing in the walls. You were born to walk through what others run from. You were made to expand beyond what others endure. And you are ready, even if your mind says otherwise. The walls have been waiting for you to test them. And when you do, you will find they were never walls, only shadows. And shadows disappear when you walk into the light. Chapter 5. The Power of a Chosen Identity. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must stop asking, "Who am I?" and start declaring, "This is who I choose to be." Until that moment, we walk the world as mirrors, reflecting the labels given to us, the expectations passed down, the names we never asked for but somehow learned to answer to. We call ourselves shy because someone once laughed when we were bold. We say we are unlucky because life did not go according to a script. We say that is just the way I am, and we build an entire life around a sentence we never even wrote. But what if identity is not discovered? What if it is chosen? Most people think their identity is who they are, but identity is not who you are. It is who you have decided to be consciously or unconsciously. It is a collection of repeated thoughts, behaviors, and self-definitions that harden over time into truth. But truth without questioning becomes a cage. And thinking beyond limits requires you to first question the deepest belief of all the belief about yourself. You are not your past. You are not your pain. You are not even your personality. All of those things can shift. What you are is awareness. What you are is will. And with that will you have the power to choose, not just what you do, but who you become. Think of your identity like software. Most people are still running versions of themselves that were programmed by childhood wounds and adolescent fears. You are trying to build a limitless life on code that was never written for your expansion, and that is why your growth crashes. You cannot outdream your self-definition. If you believe you are small, your choices will shrink to fit that belief. If you believe you are broken, you will keep seeking situations to confirm your brokenness. That is not fate. That is identity doing its job, because identity always seeks consistency, even if that consistency is destruction. This is why people repeat cycles, not because they want to, but because those cycles reinforce who they believe they are. A man who believes he is unworthy of love will sabotage healthy relationships. A woman who believes she is bad with money will spend in ways that guarantee she never feels safe. And the moment you try to change, the identity rebels, not out of malice, but out of loyalty. Your old self is trying to protect its own survival. To change, you must risk an identity death. The death of I am not good enough. The death of I am too old. The death of I always fail. And every death makes space for rebirth. But you must grieve the old you. You must honor their role. That version of you got you here, but they cannot take you there. So how do you choose a new identity? You begin with decision, not emotion, not evidence, but decision. You say, from this moment on, I am someone who, and then you act in alignment with that sentence. You do not wait until you believe it. You believe it by becoming it. If you say, I am a disciplined person, then when the alarm rings at 5 a.m., you rise not because you want to, but because that is what disciplined people do. You are not faking. You are forming. And every aligned action rewrites your inner code. Identity is not about pretending. It is about returning. Returning to the highest vision of yourself, the one you glimpsed in childhood, in dreams, in quiet moments of clarity. That version was never lost, only buried. And now you are digging through the layers of limitation to find them again. There is great power in clarity. When you know who you are, choosing to be, decisions become simple. Not always easy, but simple. You no longer ask, should I do this? You ask, would the person I am becoming do this? And if the answer is no, you walk away. That is alignment. That is power. Let us be real. The world will try to define you every day. It will try to put you in boxes based on your income, your background, your failures, your appearance. But the world's labels are only sticky if you stop creating your own. You must become louder in your declaration than the world is in its assumptions. You must write your identity in bold ink. So even when doubt arrives, you have something stronger to read. Speak it, live it, repeat it. Until it is not something you say, it is something you are. I once knew a woman who had lived most of her life feeling invisible. She was quiet in rooms. She dimmed her voice. She took pride in being low maintenance because she feared being too much. But one day she chose a new identity. She said, I am a woman of presence. And from that moment she walked into rooms differently. She spoke up. She stopped apologizing for her light. People said she changed, but the truth is, she returned. That is what you are doing now. Returning to your power, to your freedom, to your authorship. Because identity is not a sentence passed down. It is a story you write. And you can choose the pen at any time. So what identity are you willing to let die today? And what identity will rise in its place? This is the work. Not outside, but inside. Not more effort, but more truth. The truth that you are not a fixed point. You are a field of becoming. And in every moment you can declare, This is who I choose to be now. That is the gateway. That is the shift. That is how you think beyond every limit ever placed upon you. Chapter 6. The War Between Fear and Faith. There is a war raging inside every human being. It is silent, invisible, and ancient. It does not involve armies or weapons, but it determines the outcome of every decision you make. It is the war between fear and faith. And every day, one of them wins. Fear whispers in familiar tones. It says, "What if you fail? What if they laugh? What if you are not good enough?" It sounds protective, even loving. It dresses itself in logic and calls itself wisdom. But do not be fooled. Fear's goal is not to keep you safe. It is to keep you small. Fear has no interest in your greatness. It thrives in your hesitation, feeds on your doubt, and grows stronger every time you shrink. Faith, on the other hand, speaks with fewer words. It does not argue. It does not push. It simply stands, still, clear, unwavering. Faith says, "What if this works? What if your voice matters? What if you were made for this?" Faith is not loud. It does not shout above the noise of your insecurities. But it is there, always waiting to be chosen. To think beyond limits, you must choose faith, not once, but continually. Every day you wake up, the war begins again. Fear will present its case. It will remind you of past pain, show you images of failure, parade your imperfections in front of your mind. And if you are not vigilant, you will believe it. You will accept its terms and call it realism. But the moment you side with fear, you begin to withdraw from your future. You choose safety over significance. The most tragic thing is not failing. The most tragic thing is never trying, because fear convinced you it was too risky. People do not die with their dreams fulfilled. They die with dreams, unspoken books, unwritten songs, unsung, all because fear won the war one too many times. Fear and faith are both futures imagined. They are both beliefs in something that has not happened yet. Fear imagines the worst. Faith imagines the best. Both are predictions, but only one leads to freedom. The only question is, which will you serve? Serving fear does not mean you are weak. It means you are human. But the strength to choose faith is not reserved for the specialist. It is built through practice, through small decisions that say, "I will speak anyway. I will show up anyway. I will risk anyway." Every act of faith makes the next one easier. It builds muscle. It builds memory. It becomes who you are. I knew a man who spent years building a business that never grew. He tried everything, strategies, seminars, mentors, but nothing worked. One day, I asked him a question. "Do you believe this will succeed?" He paused. His voice shook. "Honestly, I do not know." That was the problem. Not his plan, not his talent. His faith was absent. He was building a house on sand. You can have the best tools, but without faith, nothing stands. Faith is not blind. It is brave. It does not ignore danger. It chooses destiny over it. Faith does not deny reality. It redefines it. Where fear sees a wall, faith sees a window. Where fear says stop, faith says step. You must train your mind to lean toward faith, like a flower leans toward sunlight. You must question fear the way it questions you. Ask it, where did you come from? What are you trying to protect? What dream are you standing in the way of? Because most fear is inherited. It is not yours. It was passed down from ancestors who survived, not thrived. They needed fear to stay alive. But you need faith to live fully. The problem is fear often feels more familiar. That is why people cling to it. It gives the illusion of control, but control is not power. Power is the ability to act despite uncertainty. Power is faith in motion. It is rising when nothing guarantees success. It is trusting that the road will appear beneath your feet, even if you cannot see it yet. There is a story of a woman who wanted to speak on stages. She had a message, a voice, a vision, but she also had fear. Every time she tried to speak, her throat closed. Her body trembled, so she avoided the microphone for years, until one day she realized fear was not going to leave. She had to move with it. She walked on stage, heart-pounding, voice shaking, and when she finished she cried, not because the fear was gone, but because she proved she could speak in spite of it. That day her faith grew louder. This is how it works, not in giant leaps, but in faithful steps. You do not wait until you feel brave. You walk while afraid. You do not wait for perfect confidence. You speak with trembling honesty, because the mind only changes when the body acts differently. If you want to think beyond limits, you must behave beyond fear. You must get used to being misunderstood. You must get comfortable in the tension. Faith does not need validation. It only needs action. You take the step. Life responds. The way becomes clear, not before you move, but because you move. That is how breakthroughs happen, not by waiting, by walking. So today, you must decide again. Will you feed fear, or will you choose faith? Will you believe the old story, or will you write a new one, because you cannot serve both? One will grow, the other will die. And the one that grows is the one you nurture with your thoughts, your words, your actions. Choose faith again and again. Let it shape your thoughts. Let it guide your steps. Let it become your new normal. Because fear will always be there knocking at the door, but faith is the one who holds the key. Chapter 7. The Discipline of Expansion. It is easy to dream. It is seductive to imagine a life beyond limits, to feel the surge of possibility when reading words that awaken the spirit. But dreaming is not the same as becoming. Inspiration is not the same as transformation. The difference, discipline. If faith is the fire, then discipline is the wood that keeps it burning. Without discipline, even the boldest vision turns cold. Expansion does not happen in grand gestures. It happens in the quiet hours when no one is watching. It is waking up when your body says sleep. It is showing up when your emotions say hide. It is choosing your vision over your mood. And most of all, it is staying loyal to a future you cannot yet see. That loyalty, that fierce, stubborn loyalty, is the mark of someone who refuses to return to a limited life. Most people think discipline is restriction, but real discipline is freedom, because it is the only path to becoming someone new. Without discipline, you are a slave to impulse. You will only act when it feels good. And feelings, as you know, are unreliable guides. Some days you will feel strong. Some days you will feel empty. If your actions depend on your emotions, your life will look like a storm, chaotic, circular, unpredictable. But when discipline leads, your emotions follow. And over time, they begin to trust you. Discipline is not about punishment, it is about purpose. You are not forcing yourself. You are forming yourself. Every act of discipline is a declaration, I am not who I was. Every habit you keep is a chisel carving away the old to reveal the possible. You are not fighting against your past. You are building the foundation of your future. But here is the hard truth, most people quit too soon. They get excited, they start strong, but the moment resistance appears, they retreat. Not because they lack ability, but because they have not trained their mind to endure. Expansion demands endurance, not physical, but mental. You must become someone who can hold tension without escape, who can sit with discomfort without justification, who can delay comfort for the sake of greatness. Let us speak honestly. There will be days when you want to give up. Days when progress feels invisible. Days when the voice of doubt returns louder than ever. In those moments, discipline is your anchor, not motivation, not hype. Discipline, the quiet, steady voice that says, keep going, one more rep, one more page, one more step. And in that repetition, you are not just building results. You are building respect for yourself. Self-respect is born in discipline. When you do what you said you would do, even when no one sees something shifts, you begin to trust yourself. That trust becomes confidence, and that confidence becomes power. not the loud kind, the rooted kind, the kind that cannot be shaken by other people's opinions because it is built on truth. You prove to yourself. Think of a tree. It does not grow because it wants to. It grows because it follows discipline. Every day it reaches toward the light. Every day it deepens its roots. Even when storms come, it remains. That is how you must grow, with consistency, with conviction, with quiet, unstoppable repetition. People want shortcuts, they want hacks, they want 5 steps to success. But the truth is, the path to an extraordinary life is boring before it is brilliant. It is showing up when it is inconvenient. It is choosing the hard thing over the easy one. It is doing the work no one claps for. But that work, it compounds. It multiplies. And one day the results appear so suddenly people will call you lucky. But you will know. Luck is what discipline looks like in hindsight. Let me be clear, this is not about becoming a machine. It is about becoming a master of your time, a master of your energy, a master of your identity. And mastery does not happen in moments of hype. It happens in the grind, in the rhythm, in the ritual. The way you do the small things is how you prepare for the big ones. There is a sacredness to discipline, because every time you choose it, you are breaking an old pattern. You are proving that the past is not your dictator. You are interrupting the cycle that kept you average. That interruption, that conscious, consistent interruption is what makes room for transformation. I once met a young artist who told me she was not disciplined. She said, "I work when I feel inspired." And her work was beautiful but rare. I asked her, "What if inspiration came after you sat down?" She resisted. But one day she began to show up every morning whether she felt inspired or not. And a strange thing happened. Inspiration came more often. Her art deepened. Her voice sharpened. She became someone who no longer waited. She created. And creation sustained by discipline became her power. So ask yourself, where in my life am I waiting for motivation? Where am I letting emotion determine action? What would shift if I chose discipline over delay? These are not easy questions, but they will reveal what comfort has been costing you and what becomes possible when you take command. This chapter is not meant to excite you. It is meant to ground you, to root you, to remind you that the most extraordinary lives are not built on hype. They are built on habit, the kind of habit that aligns with your highest self even when your lower self protests. Discipline is not sexy, but it is sacred. It is the bridge between who you are and who you could be. And every time you cross it, you remember, I am not a prisoner of my past. I am the architect of my future, and I build with every decision I make. Chapter 8. Becoming the architect of your reality. There is a moment subtle but unmistakable when you realize that life is not happening to you. It is happening through you. That moment is not marked by fireworks or celebration. It is marked by stillness. A deep, almost unsettling stillness where everything slows down and you begin to see the truth behind every result you have created. The truth that you are not merely the passenger of your life. You are the builder, the designer, the architect, and every thought, every choice, every belief you have ever held is the blueprint. Most people live in houses they did not design, emotional structures built by old voices, past experiences, and unconscious patterns. They walk through rooms of shame, climb staircases of fear, sleep under ceilings of doubt, and wonder why life feels so suffocating. But here is the revelation. You can rebuild. You can tear down every wall that was not built with your hands and start again. You do not need a wrecking ball. You need responsibility. Responsibility is not blame. Blame is about the past. Responsibility is about the power to respond now. It is not about who hurt you, who misled you, or who failed to love you. It is about what you choose to do with what remains. The most powerful shift you will ever make is moving from victim to creator, from reaction to intention, from default to design. When you stop saying, "Why is this happening to me?" and start saying, "What am I creating here?" everything changes. You must understand something deeply. The mind is not just a receiver, it is a projector. What you believe, you build. What you expect, you attract. What you dwell on, you begin to manifest not magically, but mentally. Your thoughts shape your filters. Your filters shape your focus. Your focus shapes your behavior. And behavior creates outcomes. This is not spiritual fluff. This is the invisible law that governs every visible result. If you think the world is dangerous, your eyes will scan for threats. If you believe people cannot be trusted, your actions will keep them at a distance. If you carry the identity of someone who always struggles, you will subconsciously reject ease. Not because you want to, but because the architecture of your mind is designed to sustain what feels familiar. That is the tragedy and the opportunity. Because if you designed it once, you can redesign it again. But to do that, you must interrupt the loop. You must slow down long enough to observe the blueprint. Ask yourself, what thoughts do I repeat every day? What emotions do I dwell in most? What kind of future does my thinking prepare me for? These questions are mirrors. They reveal what you have been unconsciously agreeing to. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Rebuilding begins with awareness, but it is built through repetition. You must practice new thoughts until they become your new foundation. You must speak to yourself like someone you believe in. You must treat your mind like sacred ground because it is. The seeds you plant there become the fruit you eat. And no one else can tend to that soil for you. Yes, the old thoughts will return. Yes, the doubts will knock. But you are no longer the same person who built the first house. You are the architect now. And the architect decides what gets built, what gets removed, and what gets restored. You are not your old results. You are your current decisions, and every decision is a brick. When you begin to think this way, you stop waiting for rescue. You stop waiting for luck. You stop blaming time, money, age, or circumstances. You realize that everything external is a reflection of something internal. If you want better relationships, build them first in your mind. If you want more abundance, create space for it in your identity. If you want peace, stop renting your attention to chaos. This is not easy work. It is sacred work. You are not just changing behavior. You are renovating a mental home you have lived in for decades. Some rooms are filled with comfort, some with pain, some with ghosts. You must walk through them all. You must thank them, release them, and decide what stays. Do not rush this. Honor it. This is the quiet construction of a limitless life. I once met a man who told me he had a poverty mindset. He grew up hearing there is never enough. Every time he tried to build wealth, he sabotaged it. Until one day he wrote on a piece of paper, "Abundance begins with my belief." He read that sentence every morning. At first, it felt like a lie, but over time it became familiar, then believable, then real. His external life followed, not because the sentence had power, but because his belief did. He rewrote the blueprint, and everything changed. You can do the same, not by copying others, but by choosing yourself. Choosing to be the one who no longer waits for the world to give permission. Choosing to be the one who builds anyway, who believes anyway, who becomes anyway. You are not here to survive in someone else's creation. You are here to design your own. So take the pen, take the hammer, take the silence, and begin. Begin with one thought that serves your future, one belief that matches your power, one small action that aligns with who you are becoming, and then repeat, again and again, until the new blueprint becomes your new reality. You are the architect. You always were. Chapter 9. The Gift of Resistance. There is something people do not talk about enough on the journey of growth resistance. Not just external resistance from others, but the resistance that rises from within. The invisible weight that shows up right after you make a decision to change. The voice that says, "Who do you think you are?" The fog that clouds your focus just when you start to gain momentum. It does not arrive by accident. It is a part of the process. And if you do not understand it, you will misinterpret it as a sign to stop. But resistance is not the enemy. It is the sign that you are entering new territory. The human mind craves homeostasis. It seeks balance, safety, the known. Every time you stretch into something new, your nervous system sends out alarms. Not because you are in danger, but because you are disrupting the familiar. And the familiar, even when it hurts, feels like home. So when you try to leave the old mindset, the old patterns, the old emotional habits, resistance rises like a storm. But what most people do not realize is that the storm is not trying to stop you. It is trying to test you. Will you return to who you were, or will you become who you are becoming? Resistance is the fire that forges real commitment. Anyone can be motivated on day 1, but day 30, when the results are slow and the doubts are loud, that is when most people quit. Not because the vision was wrong, but because they did not recognize the gift hidden in the friction. Resistance reveals what still needs healing. It exposes the cracks in your identity, the places where your belief is still borrowed, the old wounds that still hold weight in your decisions. To think beyond limits, you must embrace resistance, not avoid it. You must stop seeing it as a barrier and start seeing it as a bridge. Resistance is feedback. It tells you exactly where your work is. If you feel resistance around speaking up, that is your invitation. If you feel resistance to consistency, that is your battleground. If you feel resistance around money, visibility, or rest, those are the areas where your limits still hold power. Do not run from them. Move toward them. That is how you break through. The people who grow the most are not the ones with the best plans. They are the ones who keep moving through the mud. They do not see setbacks as failure. They see them as refinement. They understand that resistance sharpens resolve. It purifies purpose. It filters out the shallow motives so that only the real ones remain, the ones that matter, the ones that last. Imagine lifting weights. The resistance is what builds the muscle. No resistance, no growth. The same is true with your mind. Every time you face resistance and choose not to quit, you build a stronger version of yourself. One who does not need circumstances to align in order to move forward. One who acts on values, not vibes. One who can carry pressure and still remain focused. I once mentored a young man who kept starting projects and abandoning them halfway. Each time he said the same thing, it just did not feel right. But when we explored deeper, we found a pattern. The moment things got hard, he felt unworthy. He thought resistance meant he was not cut out for it. But when he learned that resistance was normal, expected, even everything changed. He stopped seeking ease and started seeking endurance. He finished the next project, then the next, then the next. Not because it got easier, but because he got stronger. That is what happens when you stop fearing resistance. You stop waiting for it to leave. You start training with it, and slowly it loses its power. What once felt unbearable now becomes your baseline. What once made you doubt now makes you dig deeper, because resistance is no longer a threat. It is your teacher. This shift is not comfortable. You will still have days when you want to hide, when the old habits feel louder than the new hopes. But if you can sit in the discomfort, just sit, breathe, notice, you will find a stillness beneath the storm, a deeper self who is not swayed by pressure, who remembers why you began. And that self, that is your anchor. You do not need to conquer resistance. You need to understand it, befriend it, invite it to walk beside you instead of blocking your path. Because resistance is not a wall, it is a mirror. It shows you where you still need to believe in yourself. And once you see that clearly, you can begin to respond not with avoidance, but with alignment. Let today be the day you stop interpreting resistance as rejection. Let it be the day you redefine discomfort as data. Let it be the day you choose to press forward, not because it is easy, but because it is worth it. Every person you admire has walked through the same fog. They were not born fearless, they became faithful. This is your work now. Not to remove resistance, but to rise with it. Not to escape the challenge, but to expand because of it. And when you do, you will realize something extraordinary. The very pressure you feared was shaping the power you needed. And the very path you doubted was leading you home. Chapter 10. The Courage to be Seen. There is a kind of fear that hides deeper than all others. It is not the fear of failure. It is not the fear of pain. It is the fear of visibility, the fear of being truly seen, because to be seen is to be vulnerable. To be seen is to let the world witness your soul unmasked, unguarded, unpolished. And most people have been taught that visibility is dangerous, that if you show too much of yourself, someone will find the flaw, press the wound, laugh at the effort, reject the truth. So we dim the light and call it humility. We hide behind sarcasm and call it confidence. But deep down, we are not protecting ourselves. We are protecting our pain. This fear is subtle. It whispers, do not post that, do not speak there, do not share this. It convinces you that invisibility is safety, that silence is wisdom. But silence is not always wise. Sometimes it is just fear pretending to be noble. If you want to think beyond limits, you must confront this fear directly. You must understand that the cage is not your personality. It is your protection, and it is time to outgrow it. You cannot become who you are meant to be while staying hidden. You cannot impact others while playing invisible. You cannot lead while constantly blending in. Yes, there will be people who misunderstand you. Yes, some will criticize. But their opinions are not mirrors. They are projections. Their judgments say more about their fears than about your truth. And if you let their voices be louder than your vision, you will never live free. To be seen requires courage, real courage. Not the kind that roars, but the kind that stays steady in the face of uncertainty. The kind that says, I will show up as I am, even if I am shaking. That is what it means to live in truth. Not to be fearless, but to be faithful to who you are no matter the response. Every person you admire has stood on the edge of this decision. The decision to stay safe or to step forward. They too felt the fear. They too had voices telling them to wait, to hide, to edit themselves into something more acceptable. But they moved anyway. And because they moved, they created space for others to do the same. That is what visibility does. It gives others permission to be honest, to be bold, to be whole. Do not confuse performance with presence. This is not about becoming loud. It is about becoming real. There is no need to impress. There is only a need to express. Not for validation, but for liberation. Because when you express yourself honestly, you release the pressure. You stop pretending, and in that moment you begin to live without weight. You must stop waiting to be ready. That day will not come. There is no perfect version of you who suddenly feels safe to be seen. Readiness is a myth. The only path is through. You become ready by revealing. You become bold by speaking. You become powerful by acting before the fear leaves. It will not leave until you show it that it no longer rules you. I knew a woman once who had a gift for writing. Her words could heal, but she never shared them. She said, "What if people think it is too much?" But one day, someone close to her said, "What if they think it is exactly enough?" That question changed everything. She began to post, slowly, hesitantly. Her hands trembled every time, but with every post her courage grew. And one day a stranger wrote to her and said, "Your words saved me." That was the moment she realized the fear of being seen was never bigger than the purpose of being used. Your voice is not yours to hoard. Your story is not yours to hide. Someone is waiting for the version of you that no longer edits themselves into invisibility. Someone needs your truth to activate their own, but they will not find you until you allow yourself to be found. This is not about ego. This is about essence. You were not born to blend in with the background. You were born to be a mirror for others, to show them what is possible when someone stops apologizing for their light. And the world does not need another polished performer. It needs someone honest enough to say, "Here I am, flaws and all, still choosing to shine." So show up. Show up before you feel confident. Show up before the fear leaves. Show up even if no one claps. Because the act of showing up is the victory. Every time you do, you rewrite the story. You declare, "I am no longer hiding." You say to the world, "I believe in my message more than I fear your opinion." And over time, it gets lighter. The fear does not vanish, but it loses its grip, and in its place rises a freedom that cannot be manufactured. The freedom of being whole, of being known, of being real. There will still be moments when you want to retreat. That is okay. But do not stay there. Remember who you are. Remember what you carry. Remember that your voice was not made for silence. It was made for resonance, and someone somewhere is waiting for the sound of your courage. This is your time, not someday, not next year. Now, you do not need to be perfect. You only need to be present. So speak, share, stand, be seen. Chapter 11. Living the Question. There is a sacred discomfort that visits every honest seeker, the discomfort of not knowing, of stepping forward without clarity, of waking up with questions that have no immediate answers. Most people fear this space. They rush to fill it with noise, with certainty, with someone else's truth. They want quick answers, easy paths, predictable outcomes. But the ones who grow truly growl, earn to live the question, to hold uncertainty without panic, to breathe through the fog and keep moving anyway. Because every breakthrough begins in the dark. We were taught that answers are the goal, that knowledge is the final destination. But what if the real transformation is not found in the answer, but in the way we carry the question? What if the willingness to not know is the very soil in which wisdom takes root? You see, the ego demands certainty, but the soul only needs movement. There will be seasons where the old map no longer fits, where the tools you once relied on no longer work, where the identity you once wore starts to feel like a costume. That is not failure, that is growth. And growth feels like disorientation before it feels like destiny. In these seasons, your job is not to rush. Your job is to remain curious, to remain open, to remain willing to listen to the deeper part of you that is not in a hurry. Because the real questions, the ones that change you, do not come with quick answers. They unfold. They reveal themselves layer by layer, moment by moment. Who am I becoming? What is this season here to teach me? What do I need to let go of to rise? These are not checklist questions. They are soul invitations. They require space, silence, stillness. But silence is hard in a world addicted to speed. We are conditioned to equate motion with progress, clarity with worth. So when things slow down, we panic. We call it being stuck. But stuck is not always a lack of movement. Sometimes it is a sacred pause, a moment where life is asking you to turn inward, to listen more closely, to stop outrunning yourself long enough to hear the truth you keep trying to avoid. Living the question means you stop performing for the world and start listening to your life. It means you trust that your inner compass is more reliable than any external script. It means you honor the uncertainty instead of resenting it, because what you call confusion may actually be transition. What you call stuck may actually be sacred stillness. There is a kind of magic that happens when you stop forcing answers. You begin to notice things, a phrase that hits your heart, a dream that returns after years of silence, a memory that suddenly makes sense. The universe speaks in echoes, in patterns, in whispers. But you cannot hear it when you are screaming for certainty. You hear it when you breathe, when you allow, when you say, "I do not know," and that is okay. I knew a man who left a career he had spent 10 years building. He did not have a plan. He only had a whisper. There is more. For months he wandered, not in despair but in curiosity. He read, he walked, he asked, he listened. People called him lost, but he was not lost. He was living the question. And one day the answer arrived not in a flash, but in a knowing. He stepped into a life that finally felt like his. But it never would have come if he had not honored the uncertainty. You cannot rush the becoming. You cannot fast forward through transformation. You must live it, fully, painfully, beautifully. You must stop trying to be certain and start learning to be present. Because the present moment is where all answers begin. Not in the future, not in the outcome. Here, now, in the breath, in the step, in the space between who you were and who you are becoming. This is what it means to think beyond limits. Not to have everything figured out, but to move anyway. To trust that clarity is not a prerequisite for action. That faith is not the absence of doubt, but the choice to walk through doubt with open eyes. To say, I do not have the map, but I have the moment. And the moment is enough. You will be tempted to grasp, to latch on to any voice that offers certainty. But do not trade your truth for their security. Do not settle for answers that do not feel alive. Wait for the ones that burn in your bones, the ones that make you breathe deeper, the ones that arrive not as information, but as recognition. Because when the real answer comes, it will not feel like something new. It will feel like something ancient, something you always knew, but finally remembered. Until then, walk, create, speak, rest, live the question fully. Trust that life is not withholding clarity. It is preparing you to receive it. And when it comes, you will not just hear it. You will be ready for it. Because you became the kind of person who no longer fears the dark. You walk with it. You learn from it. You become light within it. And that more than any answer is the power of thinking beyond every limit. Chapter 12. Embodying the Unseen. There is a deeper form of belief that most never touch. It is not mental. It is not something you write down or chant in the mirror. It is not even something you say. It is something you become. It moves through your body before your brain. It radiates through your presence before it forms into words. It is belief made flesh. It is when vision becomes identity, when thought becomes embodiment. This is the final frontier of thinking beyond limits, not just to believe differently, but to be different. Because thinking alone does not shift your life. Embodying does. You can know you are powerful. You can understand the science of change. You can memorize every affirmation, every quote, every principle. But if your nervous system is still holding on to the identity of who you were, your actions will echo that identity. Your body will flinch when it is time to rise. Your breath will shorten when it is time to speak. Your energy will shrink when you are finally invited to take the stage. Why? Because you have not yet become safe inside your power. To embody the unseen, you must build a bridge between the internal and the external. That bridge is behavior. Every time you act in alignment with who you are becoming, you are teaching your entire system. This is who I am now. You are no longer just practicing the mindset. You are living the mindset. Set like stone, set like truth, set like someone who refuses to go back. You cannot think your way into a new life. You must behave your way into it. This is where most people stop, not because they do not believe, but because they have not practiced being the version of themselves who can hold the new reality. We want the breakthrough, but not the embodiment. We want the miracle, but not the maturity. We want the future, but we resist the death of the past. But you cannot carry your old posture into a new dimension. Expansion has a posture, it has a breath, it has a rhythm, and if you want to walk in it, you must train your body to feel safe in it. That means learning to receive success without guilt, to hold joy without apology, to speak your truth without trembling, to walk into a room without minimizing your power, It means shifting your presence until the room responds to you differently, not because you are louder, but because you are rooted, grounded, certain. I knew a man who had carried the weight of being the underdog his whole life. It drove his hunger, it fueled his success. But when he finally achieved the life he had dreamed of, he could not enjoy it. He sabotaged it, because the part of him that succeeded had not yet made peace with being seen as powerful. He still felt like the underdog in a suit, until one day he stopped and asked, "What if I am no longer the struggler? What if I am now the steward?" That question shifted everything. He began to walk differently, speak differently, not perform, embody. And in that embodiment, his success became sustainable. You are not here to visit your next level. You are here to live there. But living there means you must let go of the identity that kept you safe in the past. You must say goodbye to the story that got you attention, the wounds that gave you belonging, the beliefs that made you feel righteous in your struggle. Not because they were wrong, but because you are ready for what is right. Not in the eyes of others, in the alignment of your own becoming. Do not confuse humility with hiding. Embodiment is not arrogance. It is integrity. It is living in wholeness. It is saying, "This is who I am, and I am willing to show you, not just tell you." Because the world does not need more words. It needs more presence. It needs people who are what they say. People who do not just talk about power, but walk in it. Not from force, but from fullness. Embodying your new self means adjusting your posture when you speak. It means taking up space at the table without shame. It means dressing in a way that reflects how you see yourself now, not how others are comfortable with you being. It means saying no without explanation, yes without hesitation, and moving as if the world has already caught up to who you have decided to become. This embodiment is not fake. It is future pulling you forward. It is the unseen becoming visible through you. It is what people feel when they cannot explain why you seem different. They are sensing the integrity between your internal reality and your external behavior. That alignment, that resonance is magnetic. It opens doors without effort. It draws the right people, opportunities, and favor to your path. Not because you are chasing, but because you are carrying. You will still be tempted to revert. The old self will whisper, "Are you sure?" Doubt will disguise itself as humility. But you must remember, comfort is not your calling. Congruence is. The more you live in congruence with your highest identity, the more natural the new becomes. Until one day you wake up and realize, "I do not have to try anymore. This is who I am now." Let this chapter be your permission to stop performing and start embodying, to stop proving and start being, to stop shrinking and start owning. You were not created to merely think beyond limits. You were created to move beyond them. And every step you take in the fullness of your truth is a step that makes the unseen visible through you. Chapter 13. The moment you become unstoppable. There is a threshold most people never cross. It is not a point of achievement. It is not marked by money, recognition, or applause. It is quieter than that. It happens deep within, in the shadows of your soul. It is the moment you decide, not hope, not wish, not try, but decide that you will never go back. That there is no version of the past worth returning to. That every doubt, every excuse, every permission slipped to stay small is now obsolete. That moment is the line, and once you cross it, you become unstoppable. This is not the kind of decision that is loud. It is not declared in front of an audience. It is made in silence, in solitude, in the same place where your fears were formed. It is where the old self dies without ceremony, and a new self rises, not born of emotion but of conviction. You stop seeking guarantees. You stop waiting for clarity. You stop negotiating with your limits, and you begin to build with what you have. From where you are, as you are. Most people never reach this moment because they are waiting for motivation to push them. But motivation is a poor master. It comes and goes like the wind. What you need is devotion, a fire that does not ask for the weather to be perfect, a fire that burns regardless of the season. That is what makes a person unstoppable, not strength, not talent, but devotion to a vision that transcends emotion. When you reach this point, you stop looking back. Nostalgia loses its power. Regret becomes irrelevant. You understand that the past is over and memory is a liar. You no longer waste time measuring your progress by the shadows of who you were. You are focused, anchored, eyes forward, feet planted, spirit fierce. And in this state, life begins to reorganize itself around your decision. Yes, life responds to your energy, but even more, it responds to your decisions. People feel it. Opportunities recognize it. Environments shift because of it. Not because of anything magical, but because real decision carries weight. It carries authority. When you walk into a room having made a decision about who you are and where you are going, you do not need to convince anyone. Your presence becomes the proof. This is where striving ends. You no longer act from desperation. You act from direction. You are not chasing something outside of you. You are building from what is already within. This is where fulfillment begins. Not when you arrive, but when you realize you already carry everything needed to build what you see. Let me speak directly to the part of you that still hesitates, that wonders, but what if I fail? You already have, and you are still here, stronger, wiser, deeper. So what if you fall again? Fall forward, fall boldly, fall becoming, because the only real failure is refusing to rise one more time. And you, my friend, are not one who stays down. You must become unreasonable, not irrational, unreasonable. Unwilling to reason with doubt, unwilling to justify limitation, unwilling to explain why you are still waiting. There is no more waiting. There is only becoming, and becoming requires movement. Relentless, imperfect, faith-filled movement. Do not confuse this with hustle. This is not about exhaustion. This is about alignment. When you are truly aligned, your actions become sacred. Every step you take carries the energy of your highest self. You do not just work, you transmit. You do not just speak, you shift. You do not just build, you become. And from this place, nothing can stop you. Not fear, not criticism, not delay, because you are no longer reacting. You are responding from identity. You are rooted in a vision that is bigger than your circumstances. You have become the person who no longer waits for the tide to change. You are the tide. I once worked with a woman who had been stuck for years. She had the talent, she had the ideas, but she kept doubting her timing. One day, in a moment of quiet, she whispered a sentence that changed her life. I will not let another year pass without becoming who I am. It was not a shout, it was not dramatic, but something shifted. The hesitation left her body. The apology left her tone. Within 6 months, her entire life looked different, not because life suddenly favored her, but because she finally favored herself. That is what happens when you decide, when you become unavailable for your old excuses, when you stop explaining your hesitation and start embodying your intention. You begin to see that life was never keeping anything from you. It was waiting for you to mean it. So here you are, at the edge of the life you have only imagined, at the doorway of your own design. There will still be resistance. There will still be noise. But you are different now. You know the cost of staying still, and you are no longer willing to pay it. Let this be the day everything changes, not because the world shifts, but because you do. Let this be the moment your feet move forward without flinching. Your voice speaks truth without trembling. Your energy walks in rooms and says, I am here. I have arrived, and I will not retreat. You are not chasing your dream. You are claiming it. Not someday. Now. You have crossed the line. You have made the decision. And from here on, you are unstoppable. Mindset reset, a higher standard of self. Now that you have walked through the fire, broken the patterns, and stepped beyond the familiar edges of your identity, something else must happen. A moment of reflection, a recalibration. a clearing away of the old residue that once dictated how you saw yourself. Because transformation is not complete until it alters your standards, not just of life, but of thought. And if you are serious about becoming limitless, you must set a new internal law for what you accept, what you allow, and what you align with. Most people want change. Few are willing to raise their standards. They say, "I want better," but they still entertain habits that keep them small. They long for peace, but remain addicted to chaos. They desire expansion, but continue to tolerate conversations, environments, and thoughts that contract them. That is the hidden war between the version of you that is rising and the one that is still clinging to comfort. The war ends the moment you decide, "I no longer negotiate with mediocrity." You must raise your standard for how you speak to yourself. No more sentences soaked in self-doubt. No more internal sarcasm disguised as honesty. No more whispering lies like "I always mess it up." "I am not ready," or "Who am I to try this?" From this moment on, you speak to yourself like someone who is sacred, like someone who has walked through fire and deserves to stand tall. Your words are no longer commentary. They are commands. They are the script you live by. You must raise your standard for what thoughts you dwell on. Not every thought that visits deserves a seat. Some thoughts are thieves. They rob you of momentum. They poison your perception. They enter dressed as logic but steal your power in silence. You must become ruthless in your awareness. The moment a thought does not serve your future, interrupt it. Out loud if you must. Say no. Not here. Not anymore. Reclaim authority over the territory of your mind. You must raise your standard for what energy you allow around you. This is not about arrogance. This is about alignment. You are building something sacred. You cannot afford to entertain energies that drain, distract, or dilute you. If a room shrinks, you step out. If a conversation dims, you exit it. If a relationship tolerates your pain more than your power, walk away. Not with bitterness, with clarity. Because every time you lower your standard to make others comfortable, you abandon yourself. This is the new standard. Nothing enters my mind that does not elevate it. Nothing remains in my space that does not honor it. Nothing speaks through my mouth that does not align with it. This is not rigidity. This is reverence. This is what happens when you begin to value your life as the miracle it is. You must now become a guardian of your greatness, not a gatekeeper afraid and defensive, a guardian disciplined and intentional. You rise in the morning and check your mind like a soldier checks his gear. Is this thought sharpened? Is this belief loaded with truth? Is this emotion mine, or did I borrow it from someone too tired to dream? That is how seriously you must begin to take yourself. You must forgive yourself for the years you stayed small, for the times you said yes when your soul screamed no, for the habits you kept to feel safe, for the lies you believed to feel loved. You must not carry shame into your new standard. Shame keeps you tied to the old self. But forgiveness severs the cord. It says, "I honor the one who survived, but I serve the one who is ready to live." This is not about perfection. This is about purity of intent. Your new standard is not rigid. It breathes, but it does not bow. You still fall, but you fall forward. You still feel fear, but you feel it and rise anyway. You still remember the pain, but now it becomes your platform, not your prison. Start now. Choose a new baseline for your thoughts. Set a new boundary around your energy. Speak a new sentence when your mind starts to drift. Say, "This is not who I am anymore. I am the one who walks forward. I am the one who thinks with power. I am the one who creates without apology." And every time you say it, you build the foundation under your future. This is your mindset reset. Not just a shift, but a standard. Not a hope, but a law. From this day on, your life does not rise to your desires. It rises to your standards. And your standards have just been rewritten. This is the life you were born for. There comes a time when a book must end, but the journey it unlocks must not. You are not the same reader who began these pages. You are no longer walking under the same weight. Something in you has been shattered, and something greater has emerged in its place. You have remembered your authority. You have awakened the part of you that no longer waits for the world to change, but becomes the change. And now the question is no longer, can I? The question is, will I? Will you walk in this truth? When the noise of the world returns, will you hold to this standard when others lower theirs? Will you protect the fire you have found inside, even when comfort tries to dim it? Because this is no longer about knowledge. It is about embodiment. It is about being the message, not speaking it, not posting it, not preaching it, being it. When you walk into a room, people should feel your clarity. Not because you are loud, but because you are aligned. Because you are not divided within yourself anymore. Because you have burned the bridges back to the version of you who tolerated less, spoke less, dreamed less. You have crossed into a new realm now, a realm where limits are lies, where vision is more than possibility, it is responsibility, where power is not a posture, but a presence. This is the life you were born for, the one where you no longer shrink, delay, defer, apologize. The one where you take up the space your soul was designed to fill. You must not return. Do not let the pull of familiarity lure you back into old sentences. Do not let the opinions of the unhealed pull you into arguments with your own greatness. Do not let your old pain pretend it still belongs here. It does not. It served its purpose. It cracked you open, but you are not cracked anymore. You are clear, and clarity walks differently. So what now? Now you create. Not out of lack, but from overflow. You build not to prove, but to pour. You speak not to impress, but to liberate. You move not to be seen, but because the one who sees herself no longer needs permission. You will still feel the tremble some days, the breathlessness before a big step. That is not a sign you are weak. That is proof you are alive. Do not fear the trembling. Welcome it. It means your life is expanding faster than your past can contain. Let the old self feel it, then leave it behind. This world does not need more information. It needs more people on fire with conviction. People who are done waiting, done shrinking, done explaining their soul to people who never wanted to understand it. The world needs you whole, healed, unhidden. So take your place now, not at the back, at the front, not as the student, as the leader, not asking for space, but creating it. You have been prepared for this. Every delay was part of your design. Every loss carved capacity. Every limit trained your muscle for freedom. You have not missed anything. You are right on time. Let the world adjust to your new volume. Let them get used to your power. Let your life become the loudest message you will ever preach. You owe no one an explanation for your expansion. You owe only your truth. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to shift things. So rise, speak, build, create, love, lead, live fully, boldly, without apology. This is the life you were born for, and now it is yours.